All right, welcome everybody to this episode of O365A. Continuing with our series of interviews, but switching gears back to Microsoft Teams meetings. I'm pleased to introduce Sean Lessman. He's the VP of Public Sector at Synergy Sky, and they have some very nifty Teams meeting solutions, which can join endpoints from Zoom, Google, and now even Apple FaceTime too into Microsoft Teams. So with that, Sean, why don't you just introduce yourself and give us a little intro about the Sky solution.
Thank you very much, Curtis. Appreciate that. Again, my name is Sean Lessman. I'm the Vice President of Public Sector here at Synergy Sky. Long-time collaboration person in collaboration. It's been coming up about 30 years now. Spent about 16 of that at a company called Tamberg as CTO of Federal and Public Sector. A few years after the Cisco acquisition at a company called Polycom, and then back with some old friends to start a company called Econo, which got acquired by Cisco as well. And now I'm here at Synergy Sky, where we focus on the workflow and getting you into more meeting types. We actually don't make any meeting types ourselves or meeting platforms ourselves. We don't make any endpoints. We just take what you have and we try to make it work better for you. Would you guys like to take a quick tour? Before we get started?
Let's go.
Okay, sounds good. So what I've got here is I've actually joined this meeting by Microsoft Teams. I'm on a native client like anybody else would be on in a Microsoft Teams world. But I have here in the room a Cisco device. And you probably see here, this is a room kit. It's on a 50-inch monitor. That's the background of my laptop. That's what you're seeing there. And I've got a touch panel. It looks very much like a typical Cisco touch panel. I received a Microsoft Teams invite to join this meeting tonight. And you'll see that it actually came from the gentleman on the call here. This is not from my own Microsoft tenant. This is from their tenant. This is something we do unique in the market today, right? We're able to join any tenant, any call, doesn't matter who books it. And let's go ahead and give it a shot here. So I can join it by a couple different ways. I can join it by pushing this join button. I can also join it by meeting ID, which is the number you would normally see in the bottom of a Microsoft Teams invite. So I could type that number in manually as well, or I could even dial by a manual sit dial. So if you wanted to give out, a join coordinates to somebody outside the organization to join the meeting, I could do that as well. But we'll take the easy route. We'll go ahead and push the join button. And what we'll get is a connection into the meeting. And first thing you're going to see is a splash screen that pops up. It says it's powered by Synergy Sky. Your meeting's being connected. You're going to get a little bit of audio feedback when I first connect because I'm going to be connecting two devices inside the same room. This splash screen can also be branded. So if you're an organization, you wanted your logo on it, you can certainly do that as well. So as it starts to scream at me, I'm going to put the camera back up and turn off the audio and switch over before it starts to. Okay, look at that. I'm getting a demo guide moment here. I'm going to hang up here real quick and just dial back in. I can safely say it's probably been well over a year since that's happened. Okay, we'll give it a second here, a couple seconds, and we'll join.
It's all good. We can say that when we were off camera, it actually was working. So
yeah, no, I know. I'm okay with that. It happens, right? All right, let me off so you guys don't get confused and turn on the audio. Okay, so we'll just keep this off to the side in case we need to show you some other things. You guys can hear me okay now? So now I'm on my room kit, right? And again, the experience you'll see is, turn the camera back on, is, this is the layout. You're going to see, unfortunately, it's going to be confusing for you, but everybody else is normally on the Cisco device. I have standard, interface here at Cisco. Using the Cisco macro system, I can actually provide a bunch of meeting controls for you. I can raise my hand if I like, and you'll see over here on the Teams sort of, you'll see the hand being raised. You also see it on your own screen. I can lower the hand. So again, you can participate just like you're a native Microsoft user. I can change layouts. So you look back here, I can change the layouts you guys are in. All the different ones, even the front row. which is kind of fun, right? We go back to something that's more realistic. I can even, this is kind of neat too. So on the screen, I can show the participant list. So this is the, again, this is the room kit. You're seeing who's in the call. And here, if I was to raise my hand, you'd also see, who's raising the hand, that sort of thing, right? And lowering it. And here's a really cool thing. I can show the chat room as well. So if you guys wanted to chat in the Microsoft Teams call, you'd actually see the chat showing up on the screen as well. And what's important about that is the meetings are much more than just a video and audio conversation, right? There's people having conversations inside the chat room. And just as a reminder, this is your Microsoft meeting, not mine. And we're able to see all the chats, right? So that's a neat thing. So go ahead and I'll leave that up for now, just in case we need to use it for something. I'll put this camera back on top, and I'm going to turn it off so it doesn't get distracting again.
I think this is a good segue to ask, there's CVI that does something similar. So what is kind of that feature kind of difference between your solution with Synergy Sky and where, kind of the traditional CVI with Microsoft is?
A good question. Excellent. So I actually have a couple slides that we don't need to go through them, but I was going to use them because they were like pictures. So when topics come up, I may bring a picture up to show it to you. I can use the standard Cisco, sharing a call, and I'm doing that right now. It's important to remember that while we're in a Microsoft Teams call, there's two different ways you can share content, right? You can just do a traditional screen share, which is what most people in the VTC world do, right? They just plug in an HDMI cable, and whatever's on the screen gets shared. In the Teams world, they like to do things called application-based sharing. They like to share PowerPoint Live, Excel, whiteboards, things that are application-based. You don't have to care about what monitor it's on, you'll just share that content. We support both. And that's one thing we do differently than CVI. CVI would only support the screen share. But I get this question a lot, which is why, funny enough, I even have the slide prepared for you, is why can we do all these things CVI cannot? What's important to remember is that CVI and Synergy Sky Connect are both SIP on one side of the equation. We're dealing with the install base, right? The difference is on the other side, CVI is a technology program where Microsoft has essentially a specified SDK, right? It's an API. The feature sets are decided by Microsoft. They develop features and then they release them to their CVI partners. That would be Cisco and Pexip today, right? The other two have dropped out of the market. And then it's up to Pexip and Cisco to develop, those features that go on to develop them, right? And today, Pexip's a little bit ahead of Cisco on that because Cisco has other priorities today, and Pexip's a little farther along with what they can implement. On our side of the equation, we're using the web app approach for Microsoft Teams. So we're not using that specified SDK. We're using the same web app, that's developed by Microsoft that allows you to join by a browser, that allows you to, build a portal if you're a Salesforce or another company. You want to build a portal around Teams. You want to build functionality that Teams doesn't come natively with. That's the approach. You would use the web app approach to do that. And that's how we're getting into the same call. And there's some benefits to doing that, right? As you know, a web browser can join any tenant. That's a benefit we get, right? So being able to join any tenant because of that. We can also, other platforms besides Microsoft also support web apps. That's how we're able to do things like Zoom and Google and FaceTime and pretty much any of the modern platforms today. And of course, share your content all the different ways and provide those interactive features. All of the feature sets available to a browser-based participant are available to us to implement. That's a basic difference between the two.
I think the offline, you showed us some additional functionality too, right? So one of the ones that I thought was really cool that I didn't really expect is the ability to join via FaceTime. So how does that sort of work in sort of, I guess, the technology in the back end?
Yeah, so the same way. If you think about it, the best way to think about our platform is we're not so focused on Microsoft. It's one of the things we do. We're focused on taking this endpoint that you've purchased and allowing it to join more meetings, as many meetings as it can, right? To be as useful as it possibly can. So it's about joining your SIP device into any meeting that you get invited into. And the latest one to be added into that portfolio is FaceTime. Like I think I mentioned before we started the call, full disclosure, I didn't know you could book a FaceTime meeting ahead of time before we did this. I do plenty of FaceTime calls with family, that sort of thing, but believe it or not, you can. And the way you do it is you just go into your calendar, whether it's on any Apple device, and you book a calendar invite, like you're booking a meeting for anything else. And in the location field, just type in FaceTime, and it will pop up as an option. And that date and time that you set, you'll get a join button, very similar to what you get in the Cisco world, on your Apple device, and you push it, and you're connected. So because of that, number one, we're able to get an invite that's at a predetermined time in the future. And the second thing is, a lot of people didn't know this, but FaceTime does support WebRTC. So they support the same web app approach that Microsoft and Zoom and Google and everybody else supports as well. And that allows us to utilize their web app to do the same thing to join the call. So the workflow for you looks the same. So
right, yeah, exactly. So, but so is there any limitation on the type of endpoint that can join? Like, do you have a list of endpoints that you say, yeah, these are the ones that we would work with, or not, or don't?
Yep, good question. So that is based on how you want to join. So we have 3 different ways you can join today, right? Pretty common. You'll hear this, right? Join by one button to push, one click join, one touch dial. Everybody has different names for it. But the idea is you get a button on your screen and you push the button and the system automatically dials what it needs to dial. Someone else has done that hard work behind the scenes to determine what you need to dial. That's what we do, right? So one button to push today works with any Cisco device or any Poly device that's pretty much in operation. So anything 2006, 2007 and later will work fine. If it can do the one button to push type functionality, we can make it get into any of these calls, right? And also another thing to keep in mind is it doesn't matter to us where it's registered. It does not have to be registered to us, or registered to WebEx, or registered anywhere special. As long as it can dial a SIP call, we can make it work. Okay, so that's one button to push. Really limited to Cisco and Poly today. Why? Because we've developed towards their APIs to turn those buttons on and tell it what to dial and things like that, right? Now, anybody else can dial by meeting ID. If you have an interface to put the meeting ID into it, right? Because there's actually a format for us, and there's a letter, T for Teams, Z for Zoom, G for Google, dot, the meeting ID at your domain, when you set us up, right? We'll get you into that call. So you can manually dial it, or you can have a touch panel that's programmed, to dial it for you. Has an interface, we use the macros on the Cisco device just to type in the number and hit connect, and that will work with anything that can dial SIP. We did just add in basically a DTMF API for all the feature sets we talked about, raising your hands and that sort of stuff, which means any third-party integrator can now develop a custom interface that's as powerful as the one we use with the macros on the Cisco, right? You can do all the functionality through the interface you design. So if you want to mix it in with, controlling the curtains and the lights and the AV and that sort of thing, you can do that now.
So you don't really care whether it's a CVI invite or a native Teams invite or a Zoom invite, or you could theoretically have all those, or technically have all those endpoints in a meeting, all just sort of happily chugging along.
This is like I've asked you guys to ask me these questions. Let me let me show you another slide here. Whoops, that's not the one I wanted to show you. Sorry, guys. Let me show you a different one. We were talking about that one.
So just to confirm, this is your laptop or desktop connected to the Cisco endpoint, sharing through the Synology Sky. Okay.
You guys still see this link, right? So this is the PowerPoint here. You can see it kind of on my.
Oh, we don't see the video.
You don't? I turned it off, didn't I? Hold on. No smoke and mirrors here. There we go. Is that better? So that's me presenting. That's the actual presenter view, and it's my PowerPoint just over here in the corner. So the idea is, let's turn the video back off again so we don't confuse everybody. The idea is we solve 3 use cases, right? We talked about a second ago. We have this touch panel, and we can make it do whatever we want it to do. It used to be really nice if you had a Cisco one, and now it's if you have an integrated one, you can do that too, right? But what's important is once you have that single experience, that single user experience, that single user interface, what can you do with it? When it's powered by our engine behind the scenes, we can do 3 things, 3 big use cases. One is if your endpoint is directly compatible with your video device. Think Cisco and WebEx. We can put the button up, you dial it, your endpoint will connect directly to that meeting platform. All the media goes directly there. We have nothing to do with that. We just make it easy for you to dial, right? If you're not compatible with you, there is a gateway. So this is a scenario where you do have a CVI, for example, and there's something about CVI you like. There's a special feature that the CEO wants to use every time that maybe we don't have or something, right? Or the experience, or something about it you like the layout it has or something, because the different vendors have different layouts, right? You can actually configure down to the individual endpoint with our platform. That endpoint, I'd like to always use CVI. This, on the rest of them, always use Connect, for example, right? If there's a CRC from Zoom, you can decide to use that. Or you can say, no, we prefer to use Connect always, right? Don't use your CVI. But you can decide that. But we solve for that as well. And the third one, which is unique, is what if there's no gateway in the call path? Somebody at the other side has sent you, you guys today have sent me a Microsoft invite, and you guys don't have any CVI. That call would fail in most cases. But in our world, it doesn't, because again, when you're going through that web app experience, and we can get you into that call as well. So we don't require any of the gateways in there. Another interesting use case is sometimes people will decide, hey, I'd like to use CVI for all my internal meetings, which is really what CVI was designed for. And then anytime I get a call from somebody else, there's no CVI coordinates in it. I'll prefer to use Connect instead. And that's all automated behind the scenes for the user. The user doesn't have to understand any of this, right? That's where all the logic's done by us.
I guess the elephant in the room being, deep in the Microsoft ecosystem is like kind of the certification process. So obviously there's no certification for what you're doing because you're not using CVI. You're doing something a little bit different. I know that Synergy Sky is a Microsoft partner. I think your solution is in the Azure Marketplace.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe if you could just talk through kind of that stance of not really being in a program that's certified by Microsoft, but what is that relationship that you have?
So that's also a good one. That tends to be more of a sales kind of conversation. Not so much, technology conversation, because if you think about it, can you guys name anything else besides CVI that's certified by Microsoft? I mean, friends, I'm just, being open and saying like iTunes not certified. You can use that with Windows, Adobe Acrobat's not certified. It's a very specific program within the video group. And when someone says they're certified, what they really mean is I have licensed this proprietary API. Microsoft has guidelines on what I can and can't do with it, what feature sets are available, things like that. I develop a product, and then I have Microsoft say, yes, we bless this as a CVI product. That's what CVI certified means. So we're pretty open about saying we're not a CVI. We don't claim to be a CVI. We went down the path of looking at the best way to solve this problem. We looked at CVI as an optional way of doing it, and for us, it just had too many limitations, right? I couldn't call everybody I want to call. It didn't show the content the way I want to share it. It didn't work for the government networks, which is important to me. Back when we made this decision, they have made some progress there, but it still doesn't work for all the government networks. I can't call it tenants. You can't do all the hand raising and things like that, right? So it's just a bunch of things we thought was limiting. And the other part, the big part of it is we wanted to do something bigger than just Microsoft. And so CVI solves your Microsoft problem mostly, but it doesn't solve your Zoom problem, your Google problem, and all these other ones, right? I did want to show you one thing just to sort of cap that one off. The big thing, I'm sure I'll get in trouble for saying this, but the big thing that, I know when I was at Polycom, we made a big thing about we were Microsoft certified, and I used to always ask the question, what does that really get us? Like, what does that mean? And, can you call Microsoft today and get support? And the answer is no, right? I mean, Microsoft's tech support doesn't know anything about Polycom endpoints. They're going to refer you back to the vendor. This is the actual statements for support for both us and for Microsoft. If you look at the bottom, that's the link, right? CVI is a partner-provided service. If you're experiencing issues, the first thing they say do is take a native Microsoft client, try to connect to the meeting. If that works, then you need to call your CVI provider. So that's support from Microsoft on CVI, and that's quite frankly the way it should be. Nobody's going to know Exit or Cisco products better than they are, right? That's reality. It's the same process for us. A big difference there is that the actual client we're using is a Microsoft native client. And so in some cases, we find issues that Microsoft doesn't even know they knew about or didn't know about. Like we found one with GCC High 2 weeks ago was an audio problem they were having. We spent some time on the phone with them, and they didn't realize they had this problem. They found it and they fixed it, right? That's it. That's really the difference. So its certification is around being a CVI or not. We're not a CVI, so there's no program that exists for us to be certified. Happy to do so if there was a program. And the second part is usually that comes up in the conversation is what does that mean for support? We use the native web app from Microsoft, and otherwise the day-to-day support sort of mechanism is really comparable between the two companies.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I want to switch gears back to the technical side.
Sure.
So I know we didn't really ask this, but the architecture is I'm assuming it's a pure SaaS solution.
It's okay. Is that the whole question, or should I wait till the finish?
Oh yeah. So like, is it a SaaS solution, and sort of like what kind of where is it deployed if it is across the world?
Yep. So this probably let me you probably write the same slide over again. So I have to stop the PowerPoint to go back to the different slide I want to go to. Let me just show you one thing real quick. I'll take you through how it works. That might be the easiest thing, and then we'll talk about how it gets deployed. Because once you understand how it works, it'll make more sense how it's deployed. This is again, we get this question a lot. How does it work? It's usually it's a secondary question to the certification thing, and that's why we want to talk. I put this together to explain to you how it works. If these are all the clouds you wanted to talk to today, like you wanted to join these different clouds, right? And how would you do that today? You either could download a native client for each one of these clouds, or you can join by a web browser, right? And so, most web browsers today, most modern ones are Chromium based, not all of them, but most of them are, Microsoft Edges, right? And, within these browsers, they've got a module called WebRTC. We all know where that came from. That came from the frustration of having to download plugins for years and it didn't work, and some, security reasons and so on. And what do? You plug in a camera, you plug in a microphone, and that is a fully supported by all these brands way of getting into their meetings today, right? I don't think anybody would argue that that's completely normal, and many people join meetings like this every day, right? So what did we do? We came along, we built an engine that terminates the SIP call, right? So it looks like an endpoint or an MC or anything else that terminates the SIP call. We decode the video and audio, and we inject it into the web camera and the microphone WebRTC stream of that web app. So think about our SIP back-to-back user agent is like just a fancy web camera and a microphone, right? That we're just plugging those things into, and that's what the patent on our product is about. It really is that simple. I probably oversimplified it, but it is that simple. And then on the side, we can still provide all the buttons for anything we don't have to pass through Connect. This is like WebEx, Chime, other things that are SIP-based. We can still provide you that single user experience, but it doesn't have to pass through us for translation, right? Now, this is important because what you see in the middle or that block, that back-to-back user agent, is something we call Connect. And that Connect for today, for the cloud-based, let me back up for a second. That's Connect. Then we have an agent that sits on your premise called Suite. Suite talks to your calendaring system. It talks to your endpoints. It talks to WebEx, things about pushing buttons on. It does all the understanding of the meetings. It has your database. It has all your data is there local to you, right? Everything about your organization is local to you. And that engine talks to Connect to provision these meetings, right, to make it happen and so on. Now, the Connect engine, thing that's in the middle of the screen, can be deployed for most of the world into our SaaS cloud. We have a public cloud where we provide the compute, and that does all that translation. It terminates that SIP call and does the translation for you. It's an ISO 27001 cloud. It only requires you to have SIP calls to the internet. We take care of the rest. Right? There's no WebRTC anywhere near your environment. It's all done through us. And that's how it's done for the commercial world and a lot of the SLED markets, and anybody who can use it, right? And then we have a second use case, which is the federal government. They require obviously things like FedRAMP for a SaaS product. We don't have a FedRAMP product today, but the option that, quite frankly, has been quite received well is a self-hosted option, where you take the exact same software we've deployed, and you deploy it into your Azure tenant, your Google tenant, your AWS tenant, but it's a private cloud. That does not require a FedRAMP authorization because it's not a SaaS product. And that's really the way our federal customers have been using that. That also enables them to join any of these clouds up to the DoD level. All the available clouds today can be joined through our product, and we have federal customers today working at all levels. So federal system integrators, civilian, Department of Energy, DoD, et cetera, all using the product today.
Hey, Sean, just a really quick question now that I understand the infrastructure a bit better. If you have a multi-geo customer or multi-geo endpoints, do you have a deployment of Connect in your cloud data center in multiple geos, or could a customer do that, the Connect piece?
Yes, they could. I mean, it's possible. We don't tend to, we tend to steer people towards a public cloud if possible, because it's less complicated for them as a customer to support. Where possible, we do have some federal agencies doing it. They've decided they've gone through their cyber teams; they're fine with it. But yes, there are multiple data centers around the world in the different sort of markets we play in. There's several in the U.S. And they're in Europe. We have ones in Asia Pac. And as new markets open up for us, we're quite willing to install data centers in those markets as well. We've even had like a Canadian clients that have said, from a data sovereignty standpoint, we want it to be data center clouds in Canada, and it's quite easy to do for us to do that.
Good stuff. Good to know. Okay.
So Sean, this is really neat. How tied are you to any changes any of the endpoint manufacturers make? Like, so Zoom changes something in their client. Obviously Microsoft, there was a big change from Teams 1.0 or from Classic to 2.0. Any of the other vendors, like, do you have, like, does that just get sprung on you, or are you aware of it? Like, what happens? I'd assume that it could possibly break stuff.
It can. So we are aware of it. Sometimes, I won't name names, sometimes vendors jump the gun and release things faster than they tell anybody they're releasing it. So they'll make a public statement that says, we're going to do this January 15th, and then, I don't know, a day or two before Christmas, they decide to do it instead. And and then some vendors didn't necessarily have a beta environment. They would just sort of release things out, and now those partners allow you to say, yes, I want it now, or I want it later type thing. So things have gotten better on that experience, but we can fix things very fast if for some reason something gets missed. Or we had some outages recently where two vendors involved, we had to basically fight with them for 2 weeks to get them to admit they changed something, because their public websites didn't say anything. And there was an outage, and they finally admitted, yes, we did. We changed some things. They didn't put it on their websites, or they didn't tell anybody. But for the most part, yeah, everything's fine. We have good relationships with the guys. They tell us what's going on. Things break, but if they break, we're pretty quick to fix them. And I would say there's been, since we've been doing Microsoft, for example, there's been two sort of big ones. That the Web 2.0 was a big one, right? But that was we knew all about it. The software was written before they did it, quite fine. The other benefit I personally have is organizations tend to roll out to the commercial clouds first. So at least for my government customers, we see it coming. We can kind of see what bumps there were in the commercial world before they makes it to the government world. So that part I get lucky on when it comes to my customers, but for the most part, it's fine. There's nothing any different or any more odd than you would expect from any sort of typical vendor in the space.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, did you have another infrastructure question, or are we good there?
Yeah. It does look like from the infrastructure, you kind of have the glue between the SIP endpoint and the WebRTC. So I'm assuming that for every concurrent call, you're having to spin up like a WebRTC instance and kind of connect that probably one to many from the SIP MCU or whatever to all the WebRTC connections, or how's that kind of scale out?
No. Yeah, good question. It is, we do not, so we license our product by endpoint. And so if you have 100 endpoints, 100 licenses, right? We do not charge in any way by concurrent call or which platforms you want to join, or if it's your tenant or some other tenant, these sort of things, right? So from that aspect, the number of concurrent calls you can have really depends on how many, for self-host, depends on how much processing power you want to put towards it. In our private, or our cloud, our SaaS cloud, we take care of the compute. So when you license an endpoint, it's a flat fee for the entire year. You can call as much as you like, as many times as you like, and so on, right? So there's nothing going on there. We take care of that for you. The architecture, the way it works is, you're right. It used to be in the early days, it was a sort of a big bag of resources that dealt with everybody's calls. But when you call through it, you get an individual containerized instance that spins up, that houses it. It doesn't even talk to the host OS, and it makes the call. And when the call is over, it spins down and dissolves. Right, it goes away. And so we don't retain any data. We don't look at that sort of stuff. It really is sort of an instance that spins up on the fly, to your point, and then drops out of the equation when it's over.
All right, Sean, this all looks fantastic. I don't want to put you on the spot. This is probably more of a sales question, but if people are interested in trying this out, is there like a beta program, or what's the best thing for them to do?
You know what? That's a great question. So let me show you guys something fun. I'll send you the link for this afterwards if you want to tag it, in the comments.
Sure.
Or what have you. But on our website, there is actually a tool that you can use, and nobody's going to track you or call you up later on. Just so I can bring this up real quick. So if I was, I will show you how to get there. But if you go to our website, let's say www.synergysky. And right here at the top here, it says free trial, right? Click on it. These are the three ways that you can trial our product. One is called a self-serve. This is, you don't have to talk to anybody at SynergySky. No, you don't have to sign up for anything. No one's going to call you later because you gave them your email address. Instapoc is where we take one of your endpoints, we default it and set it up on our WebEx tenant, and you have full access to our infrastructure, right? So it's minimal effort on your side. And the full is like, you want to deploy it fully in your premise because you want to see, you want to see how it works in your environment, right? This is the easiest one. You can do this as soon as we hang up. It works with any of the platforms we support today. And you just go in here and you go and take, for instance, our meeting tonight. If I let's swing this over here real quick. And minimize a little bit so you can see both. If I take our meeting invite over here, I'm dealing with like three big monitors, so apologize. Sometimes I lose the mouse. Okay, so if I bring this guy over here, all you're going to do in this box is you're going to go down here where it says join the meeting now. You're going to right click on that guy and say copy link and throw it in this box. And again, there's no sign up needed. This is on the public internet. Hit generate URI, and you'll get a manual URI that you can join. And if you go and just type it into any SIP-based endpoint, you'll join this call right now. So you can try this out for Zoom, Google, Microsoft. I don't believe there's a time limit on it. Like, if people see you keep using it every day, someone might call you and say, hey, you should buy this, right? But the reality is, if you want to try it out for a full meeting, go for it. Take an invite from any tenants and give it a shot. What you don't get with this test is you don't get anything that's macro-based, right? Now, obviously, with the new DTMF support, that may not be in like the release right now, maybe next week. You'll be able to do DTMF tones and make all the, raise your hand, change layouts. But without the macro, you may not get a nice, nice experience that makes it easy for users and so on. But what you will get here is connect to any tenant. You can share your content, the basic stuff there, right? And then drop the phone, you're done.
I love the frictionless options there. That's great.
Yep.
Super. All right, Sean. Well, I've learned a lot. Your solution looks fantastic. I like to focus on multiple endpoints, just making them work, not on one particular vendor. So that's fantastic. So I want to thank you a lot for coming on and explaining the solution. It was fantastic.
I appreciate it, guys. Appreciate the time.
All right. See you then.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.